Susan Sonz is CCH IHC. She is director and principal instructor at New York School of Homeopathy. Susan has been the main teacher and director of the New York School of Homeopathy since 1998. She studied with many of the acknowledged masters in the field, was awarded a homeopathic master clinician diploma in nationally certified CCH and internationally certified IHC. Susan regularly publishes articles for national journals, including special presentations for homeopathy.com. In June 2012 and March 2016, she served on the national board of the Council for Homeopathic Education and as the president of the New York State Homeopathic Association. Currently, she is serving on the board of the Association for International Homeopathic Certification and is a member of the group steering committee. Susan is a well-known member of the international community of classical homeopaths and is conducting several highly respected homeopathic provings. In her teaching, Susan includes her own clinical case studies which serve to illuminate remedy pictures while reinforcing homeopathic philosophy. She holds very high standards on homeopathic education while infusing her teachings with humor and sensitivity. Susan lives and practices in New York City. So with these words, welcome Susan to this unique platform.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored.
So Susan, you have been associated with homeopathic education since the very beginning, since the time you started with homeopathy. A lot of people don't know your story. I personally know about your work because we have worked at homeopathy for so long, and we are honored to have your publications regularly at homeopathy.com. But I would like to know from you, for the benefit of our audience, I know that you were a sculptor before you moved to homeopathy.
Yeah.
Yes. So how did the art of sculpting led you to art of homeopathy?
That's interesting. You know, in America, I know quite a few artists who turned to homeopathy. My first teacher, Robert Stewart, was an artist, became a homeopath, he actually started the New York School of Homeopathy. And now he's back as an artist, mostly, you know, with doing some homeopathy. I think they go hand in hand. The Organon was subtitled the medical art. And I think there's something very artful about work in homeopathy. And I was always really interested in alternative medicine as well. And it just got to a point where it made more sense. You know, when you're making art, it's also wonderful, but to be honest, you're making art for wealthy people for the most part. And there's something sort of morally troubling about it. And changing to homeopathy released me from any of that kind of guilt, because now, you know, you're helping people. And if running the school and having a school clinic, we can have basically free homeopathy as well as having a private practice. So I never really looked back. As much as I loved my work in art, I didn't look back, because suddenly I was able to really do some good, is how it felt. As well as leave a mark, which is, I think, what artists like to do, you know?
Yes, indeed. So are there any parallels in the art that you were before doing and now that you're doing homeopathy?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I always had on my wall a periodic table for making some of the materials that I needed to make for my artwork. And I use the same periodic table to work in homeopathy. I think the parallels are really this, that you need to go with the flow. You can't, I think for me, one of the most important things in work in general is goals and intentions. And I start right in the beginning with my students talking about goals and intention being the most important thing. Intention to cure is, to me, the most important thing. So needing that strong intention, I think, is important in both fields, but also being loose, or I don't know what word you'd like to use, loose enough to evolve as your work evolves as an artist, or as everybody's work evolves in homeopathy, I think has been very important, because standing still, sticking with the same artwork, or sticking with your original ideas about homeopathy, I think is very stagnating, and you won't move forward. You have to grow as an individual so you can help your students grow. So those are parallels for me.
You have been associated with homeopathic education for so long. Americas are not, United States of America is not well known for homeopathy. And there are not too many homeopaths there. How difficult or how easy it is for you to have an organization there which is solely focusing on homeopathic education?
So I think it's important. Yeah, in America, we don't actually have a legal status for homeopathy. That was eliminated, I think, around 1920.
Yes.
And so it became a less, obviously, very much less formalized practice of medicine in America. However, that kind of gave us the freedom, because we were never going to get licenses and so on. It gave us the freedom to evolve as a community and create certain standards and work together. In the 90s, homeopathy in America was very, I don't know, ad hoc, very disorganized, unorganized, not disorganized, unorganized. And that was one of my goals when I started studying with Robert at the New York School of Homeopathy. He started that school in 1990, and I started with him shortly after that. One of my goals was to organize the school and create a curriculum that we basically still follow, and turned it into a 4-year diploma program, which a lot of schools in America were able to do at that time. But it took an evolution as a group for us to go from this sort of study group approach to organized schools with dedicated curriculums. I think that's been very important. And so we've been using the same, I took over the school. Robert moved to California in 1998 and gave me the school. So I was very lucky. I didn't actually have to start a school on my own. But at that point, I was able to turn it into a 4-year diploma program, come up with a curriculum, and this weekend seminar method that we're still using today. Because in America, because you're not going to go to medical school for homeopathy, most of my students have other jobs. And so working on the weekends very intensely, and a lot of self-study in between, has been a model that's worked for us for all these years. It started out I'd say we started working this way in 98, and we're still doing it. It's a bit different now. We also, I think one of the important things for the school was that I had hired a space for the school, which a lot of schools in America don't seem to be able to do because it's quite expensive. And I chose to dedicate a lot of the school's money to this purpose, so that we had a lending library, we had a meeting space for study groups, we had a meeting space for students to do their supervision cases, and I used the space for my private clients. So that was really important to us, which of course all changed with COVID. Yes, like so many other things. And now we're online like most schools, and my work has gone online. I think the advantage of this has been that for the last 2 years, I've been able to live in Jamaica, West Indies, which has been really nice, and keep up my work. I mean, I never dreamt I'd be able to do something like this, because you had to be on site. But, and my students now come down in May. We have a clinical workshop here. We see Jamaican clients, which is fascinating. And so actually, I think the evolution that I was talking about as an artist is so important in homeopathy because I feel you have to keep going. You know, things get thrown at you. COVID happened. You know, it was nobody's plan. And you have to find a way to evolve despite that if you're going to stay in business. And somehow I've been able to stay in business because I've gone with the flow. You have great years, and for like 3 to 5 years, everything seems fabulous. And then it starts going down. In America, we're all competing for very few students. It's not a recognized profession. So it takes a lot of courage for someone to decide to study homeopathy in America, I think.
Yes, we have seen in these last 20 years the dream project of American College of Homeopathy come up and then just disappear. It broke my heart.
Exactly. I know, it's heartbreaking. It's
Yes.
difficult because there is a limited number of people who will dedicate themselves to a non-professional profession, a non-recognized profession. However, I think my students and homeopaths in America are thrilled to be able to do this work, despite that kind of challenge, which I'm going to say again, also offers you a little bit of freedom. There's something about it. Yeah.
Susan, because we are today talking about what this whole conversation is for young students, what they can learn from successful people like you, and how they can build upon your success. So my question to you would be, if somebody in the Western Hemisphere, in India, there's a lot of legality. You need to have an actual medical college to study homeopathy. It's a full 5.5 years degree course, and it's a proper medical degree. So not anybody and everybody can open a medical college, medical school. But in the Western world, the things are still flexible. So what advice would you give to somebody who wants to open a school of homeopathy in United States or anywhere in the Western world?
Well, I would say first, I think I'm going to give a little more general advice first, which I think is about intention. I start teaching my students right away about intention. And I think the most important intention a homeopath has to have is to cure, the first aphorism, right? That's to me the most important part of homeopathy, that fame, money, or success in a school or anything else is on the side compared to the intention to be a good homeopath and to cure people. So I think that needs to be very, very clear from the start as a student. And then if you have a goal to start a school, you still first have to build a reputation or be lucky enough to connect with other reputations so that you can attract students. Right now, with everything online, it might be easier than ever, and it might be more difficult than ever. I think that's hard to know. I'm so grateful that I had all those years in a physical space with my students, my graduates. I work with my graduate students, my graduated students who work with me in my private work. It's been a wonderful experience, and now we're evolving into a new place. So advice on starting a school, I think, is always about intention to cure and intention to teach your students to cure, and keep that as the focus. And I think in America, maybe it's my experience, I think not trying to get too big as a business, I think is important. If it's going to be big, it will happen, right? But for that to be your intention, I think is a problem, because you need to be going with the ups and the downs. And if your intention is to be huge in the beginning, you're going to have trouble going with the flow. And so I think keeping it manageable in the beginning, but also not quitting. It seems like a
Yes.
sort of easy thing to say, but as we know, a lot of people have had to give up on it.
Yes, we all
And
face setbacks, and it's important that we don't give in.
yeah, you don't give in, you just keep going, because so you have a bad year. As long as you're surviving, you keep going. And then all of a sudden, the next year is terrific. So you have to keep that in mind, sticking to your goals, sticking to the work, and being flexible. So instead of, and staying in the moment, it's kind of corny, but staying in the moment so that you're not fretting about next year and 10 years from now. You're thinking, this is what I'm doing. This is good. This is good work. I'm teaching people. My students are doing well. And you go with that instead of worrying about, well, in 10 years, will I be the most important school in America? That's unimportant. Be in the moment. Do what you're doing.
As a
And
clinician, also, you are very well known as a classical homeopath. And so the young graduates who come out from your school or from any other school, what advice do you give them to build a homeopathic practice?
okay.
A successful homeopathic practice, I must say.
Yeah. I think the most important thing, first of all, in the school I teach, it's been really important. I started doing seminars many years ago in the 90s in New York, because somehow New York, the biggest city, had no homeopathic seminars. So Robert and I started doing that in the 90s, and I kept it up. And having connections with the international homeopathic community, I think, has been crucial to the school's success and to my work as a classical homeopath, because it's important to stay involved with the innovative and progressive work in homeopathy. And I teach it in my school right from the first weekend of the foundation year, that there is this classical foundation and there's other work going on. So when I teach Hahnemann's 3 miasms, I tell them about all the other miasms that we talk about instead of keeping it as a secret for the 3rd or 4th year. I think it's important to be flexible again and learn from other people, continue to learn. I think sometimes you feel like, well, I know what I'm doing now. I'm successful at what I'm doing. I'm just going to stick with this. But it's important to work with other people. So all of the homeopaths that I've worked with, Rajan and Divya and Paresh and Lou Klein and, there's Jan Schulten and, all these people that came to New York, Razi Moonen, so many people came to New York, and many of them repeatedly. And it gives my students the opportunity to keep learning, and it gives me the opportunity to keep learning. And my work keeps evolving. If you stagnate, I think it's the biggest mistake, probably in any field. But I think in homeopathy, it would be a tragic mistake to say, well, Hahnemann only used 100 remedies, so we're going to stick with that. So I think the innovative work is very important. And so it's important for all of us. Someone else said this today, never stop learning, never stop studying. It's infinite. And we're studying the whole world in homeopathy. We're studying the whole world, everything about plants, everything about animals, everything about minerals. That periodic table that I was talking about before was a mystery to me for so long. Now it has, I have some understanding of it, but I continue to get more understanding of it. It never stops. That's, I think, the most important thing. There's so many webinars. The advantage of COVID is that now we're able to get together in formats like this, and people from all over the world can hear us. Whereas before it was like getting the money together to fly to a seminar and pay for the seminar and stay in a hotel. It's much easier now in a way. So there's no excuse not to keep studying. That's my biggest advice.
Yes, but there was a lot of fun in those days too. Getting
It
together
was so much
physically,
fun.
we still yearn for those days again.
I wonder if we're going to go back to that. It was so much fun. I know we all miss it terribly, but we'll see. Again, we'll see what happens.
Yes, you don't know what will
We
happen
make
in the
a plan
future.
about it.
Susan, you have done lots of provings also,
Yeah.
and some of them have been very fascinating. What I would like to know is from you how important it is for homeopathic students to be involved in homeopathic provings, to be a prover themselves while they are students.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. It's so much work for the master prover, right? Because we have to write these provings up. It's a
Yes.
lot of work, but it's an incredible experience for the students because I think most crucially, I mean, I'm a pretty big believer in bringing patients to the experience of the source of the remedy that they need. And the thing that provings prove is that there's this bizarre connection to the source. And so in the housefly proving, we had this guy's wife. He was proving like crazy for us. We loved him, but she was so frustrated because he looked horrible. He looked terrible. And she said, I know what you're proving. You're proving maggots. And that's amazing that just by watching her husband evolve in the experience of the source, she knew what the source was. And so I think that's the most important thing about provings is to show all of us, remind us how connected these remedies are to the source in nature that they're made from, even though there's nothing in them, right? I mean, that's continues to be the most fascinating thing about homeopathy is there's nothing there, but the connection is so strong. And so provings are fascinating in terms of that experience. And then we also learn how we can use the remedy, which is useful. But we can't do provings for everything we're using. I mean, many of the remedies that I use have no provings attached to them. Still, if you understand the concept of the proving and you've had experience with that, you know that if a person is speaking from that source, they're going to benefit from that remedy, whether or not it has anything to do with arthritis or whatever their chronic problem is. It will work because this is truly the basis of like cures like. So that's why I like provings, as much work as they are. And I'll repeat that, they're a lot of work.
So what is it that you're working on now, and what are your expectations from the future for homeopathy?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I expect. For homeopathy, I think it's really important. This is my feeling about homeopathy. We're always sort of, the little guy that's being attacked. That's the delusion that homeopaths suffer from. And I try to tell my students to stop worrying about it. They're trying to make in America, the FDA make homeopathic remedies prescription drugs. That would be a disaster in a way for a lot of us. We can make remedies. We can order remedies from overseas. I don't think it would ruin homeopathy, but it would change homeopathy. But I think it's important for us not to stick with that delusion as homeopaths. Someone else said it today as well. This work is better than Western medicine. It's better. It's fabulous. It's amazing. The cures you get in homeopathy can't be dreamt of in Western medicine. And we need to remember that. And not worry about the FDA and so on, and realize that we will continue for 200 years. Homeopathy has been attacked, and it'll continue to be attacked, but we've survived. And it's important to focus on the survival. So I try to tell my students not to worry about that. I just want to add, I think nowadays it's important to think about the anxiety in general that's in the world, about the world. So I try to tell my students, I mean, and then in America, we went through the whole political thing and we're going back into it. So students of homeopathy get depressed about that as well. The world is going to hell and what's going to happen, and there's war and there's this and there's that. And I say, look, it's important to think about your little world, your little universe, and to work on that. And as a homeopath, you have the opportunity to cure people. And when you cure one person, that person is going to tell at least 5 other people. And hopefully those 5 other people will also go for homeopathy. And it just keeps growing exponentially. And that's the only thing I think we can focus on instead of worrying about the world or the FDA or these things. How are you working in your little world? And is your little world getting bigger? Because that's what it does. It expands, right? And I think that's the better way to focus on this, and stop watching the news. That's what I say to everyone. Stop watching the news, because of course you'll get anxious and depressed about what's going on in the world, but it doesn't help any of us. Keep curing people. They will tell their friends will get cured, and the world will get better and better. In that way, that's how I look at it.
Yes, Susan, that's the way to go for. Ultimately, our clinical results is what that has kept homeopathy alive, and that is what will keep homeopathy alive in future too. Despite
Exactly.
all.
And we all, I mean, I don't know about you, I'm constantly amazed when someone's cured. I love it.
We all do. We all do. That is like a booster shot of homeopathy for us.
That's fabulous.
Every cured case is like a booster shot. It brings more confidence on the table to see the next patient.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes,
And
even after 20 years of clinical, 21 years of clinical experience, I feel thrilled after every cure. Yes, that's wonderful.
That's what it does. So focus on that, focus on the positive. Again, it sounds corny, but that's what we need to do, is focus on what we're doing. It's amazing. Homeopathy is so amazing. And I feel so fortunate to be able to do it and to continue doing it. And we never have to stop doing it because,
Yes.
So that's my advice is stop fretting, focus on the positive, and keep working, keep learning, keep working, because it's amazing what we do.
Yes, wonderful advice, Susan. Thank you so much for your precious time today. We have run out of time for this event today, and it has been a pleasure to have you here, to have this conversation with you, to have these insights about education, improving, and homeopathy in general. I'm sure students here today would learn a lot from your advice, and I look forward to seeing you again and having a longer conversation with you.
I do too. It was really nice to meet you and speak with you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.